my wife and my kids and I are getting ready to move. Our movers are coming tomorrow, so I'm a bit of in a brain fog, because anytime you take everything you own and put it in a box, you realize how much crap you have, And so it's good to go through it all, but it's also kind of a unnerving experience when everything you're used to being able to pull out of a drawer now is in some cardboard box somewhere. So it's like being in a giant library of cardboard, but it's good sometimes to remember that that's just stuff, And the important thing is our family, and we're taking all that with us, So anyway, if I lose my place a couple times tonight, that's why it's been kind of a day, or a week, I should say. What do you do, though, as I think about moving? We had to get ready to move. You can't just have the movers show up at your house. If they walk into your house and you're moving, and we hired a crew of 3 guys that are coming in the morning, if they walk in the house and they look around and our house is not ready to move, they won't move us. They're not going to start boxing things up for us, or if they do, they're going to charge us a lot more. Think about getting ready for school. Parents, this is about the time where you see all the Target ads, all the Walmart ads for back-to-school sales. And you get that list, and I, God willing, we'll be back at school this fall, and it'll go wonderfully well and safe and all those good things. But you get that list of each kid. You gotta spend about $100 a kid at Target or wherever with all the supplies they need. This is what you need to get ready for school, right? Think about the sports teams getting ready for the season. I drove by Century today, and I got that wonderful feeling of watching the varsity football team out there doing drills in their shoulder pads and helmets. It just felt like, things are coming back to normal. It was such a wonderful feeling to see the team out there practicing. What do you do to get ready for a season? Number one, you condition your body. We're in a series right now called Warm Up, where we're talking about getting ready for seasons of life. Football teams, any other athlete and teams, this is the season where they're practicing overtime, 2-a-days, in the hot weather, in the hot gym, getting ready for the season. They're working on plays. They're memorizing strategy that then, if they're ready for the season, it'll come naturally in the game. What do you do when you're getting ready for a meal? Well, you got to have the groceries. If you just decide to cook a meal and you don't have the groceries, it's going to be not a very tasty meal of whatever you can find in your cupboards. And then there's somebody's got to set the table before the meal is done, because is it not, if you're the cook in your house, is it not a pet peeve to have the meal done and whoever's job it was to set the table didn't do it yet, and now the food's ready and we can't eat it? How many people, that's your pet peeve? When someone's job is to set the table and it's not ready, right? Or someone's job is to get the table ready for this luscious food you cooked. How about this? We know what it looks like to get ready for school. We know what it looks like to get ready for sports. We know what it looks like to get ready for a meal. Let me ask you this. What does it look like to get ready for the next season of your faith? Think about that for a minute. When it comes to faith, isn't it true that we often have kind of either I am or I am not a Christian, or I do or I don't go to church? How often do we forget that just like a new season of sports, just like a new season of life, just like a new season of athletics, just like a meal that you're planning to have prepared and ready, faith takes preparation to be ready for the next chapter of life. Now, I want to take a look at a passage of Scripture today where Jesus is trying to pull people out of this consumeristic mindset. I think in American Christianity in particular, we have a very individualistic, consumeristic mindset where either I go to church or I don't. I go when I want to, I don't when I want to. And I go to the church that provides the things that I might want the church to provide for me. Most of us don't necessarily think of the church in terms of where do I want to invest in a community that's going to transform that city, which is our vision at Surprise. We want to provide a place for people to grow and engage in life together and mission to transform the city around them and their neighborhoods, and to band together to make a difference. Jesus is talking about what it looks like to get ready for that kind of life when it comes to faith. Otherwise, if you don't, the forces of life just kind of blow you all over. So I want to go to Luke chapter 14. If you have the app open, you can actually click on the Bible. You can click on worship and then click on Bible, and it'll take you to the Bible, and you can look up Luke chapter 14 and follow along with us. Or if you have your separate Bible app, I like the YouVersion Bible app. You can select any translation. You can pull up the Bible anywhere. You can even download it to your phone so that if you're on a plane and you're not allowed to be online, you can pull your Bible out right then and there. Luke chapter 14. I love this first sentence. Listen to this. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus. So this is like a movie star walking around with an entourage of people that just want to see everything he does, want to hear everything he says, and maybe he'll make another massive public meal like he did when the feeding of the 5,000, or he might put his hands on someone sick and heal them, or maybe something that he'll do will affect me in a positive way. So he was attracting just a huge crowd of followers. And in some ways, Jesus shied away from that. Whenever his band of followers got too large, he started to say things that really kind of freaked him out about following Jesus. In John chapter 6, for example, he said to the crowd, if you don't eat my flesh and drink my blood, then you can't follow me. And they're like, what is wrong with this guy? Are his followers supposed to be cannibals? What's going on? And a lot of people actually stopped following him when he used the metaphor of eating his body and drinking his blood. Here, he does it again. He sees this large crowd, and he's like, I'm not sure these people really want to do this. The internet just went out on me, so give me one second. Here I am. I should have downloaded this on my own phone. There we go. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus and turning to them. So he's walking, and then he turns to this large crowd that's following. And in that, I think of Forrest Gump, if you've seen the movie Forrest Gump, where he's running, and people just follow him wherever, from wherever. And at one point, he just turns around and says, think I'll go home now. And he just goes home. Jesus turns around like Forrest Gump and says, if anyone wants to follow me. Well, wait a minute. We are following you. We're walking behind you. We are attending the event that you are offering. But he wasn't talking about attending an event. That is not what it means to follow Jesus. You've heard people say, just being in a garage doesn't make you a car. Just being at a church thing doesn't make you a follower of Jesus. Just walking physically behind Jesus didn't mean that these people were his followers. So he turns to them and he says, if you want to follow me and you don't hate, hold on now. Some of our brothers and sisters are going to actually smile when I read this verse. Listen to what he says. If you want to follow me and you do not hate your father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters. Some of the kids are like, oh, I do that all the time. Yes, even life itself. If you don't hate your family and your very life, such a person cannot be my disciple. He goes on. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. People thought of cross like electric chair back then. This was not a cute golden thing that you'd wear on your chest. A cross was an instrument of brutal execution that you would see lining the roads with bodies on them outside of any city that would rebel against the Roman Empire. Ancient historians have found that people rarely even mentioned the word crucifixion because they had seen so many crucifixions and it terrified them. And Jesus says, I want you to take up your cross and follow me, wherever that road leads. So let me get this straight. I mean, his followers had to be sitting there like, I imagine one of them had like a big Slurpee from the gas station and just kind of looking at his buddies like, I kind of felt like this was going to a good movie, and now you're turning to me and you're not handing out popcorn. Instead, you're saying that I have to hate my family and my life to follow you. And I have to carry an electric chair on my back to follow you. What are you talking about? And I think the answers are, I think it's easy to explain in a very simple way. Those two things mean this. An ancient way of saying prioritize this over this would be to say, I hate this and I love this. It's not how we think of as hatred. It is, I'm going to operate as if this is the most important thing in my life. And there are going to be times where it feels like I hate this. I don't, but it simply means that this is not my top priority. My kids and I have this thing where we're talking about, I love you more than anything else in the world except Jesus. And it introduces a good conversation when we say that, because why is it so important to love Jesus more than our dear children, our beloved spouse? Clearly, the answer is this. I can't love my wife anywhere near as well as I can if I'm following Jesus. I can't love my kids, and I cannot be a patient, gentle, understanding, and firm when necessary father if I am not loving Jesus and following him and pursuing his will for my life totally and completely. I'm a much better dad when I love Jesus more than my kids. I'm a much better husband when he is my God and I don't put my wife on the pedestal of having to do only what Christ can do for me. No one can bear those expectations. I'm a better parent. I'm a better sibling. When you, if you're a kid here and you fight with your siblings, I don't know if that's ever happened in your house, kids. If you get in a fight with your brother or sister, evidently it happens from time to time, but Jesus wants you to love him and follow him and say, Jesus is the most important thing in my life. And when you do that, you're going to be the best brother and best sister you could ever be. So that's what he means when he says, I want you, if you want to follow me, I want you to demonstrate to everyone in your life that I am the most important thing in your life. I want you to make decision after decision that underscore the reality that I matter. I'm not just a guy that you follow for a good show. I am the God of your life. I am the master and commander of your life. I am your leader. I am your forgiver. And I want you to act as if you rely on me and I am the hope of your life and I'm the hope of the world. If you love Jesus more than anyone, you are going to love other people better than you could ever love them. So that's the first thing. Secondly, take up your cross and follow me. That's pretty simple. I think he's saying, look, following me is not an easy street. It's not like the easy way through life. Sometimes it's a hard road. Sometimes you have tension with people. Sometimes you feel different. Sometimes you don't cut the same corners other people might cut, but you try to focus on what's right and what would please God and not just what would be good for me or what would be easiest or what would be the most lucrative or whatever. That's a form of carrying your cross. Jesus carried a literal cross and was executed for the sins of the world. What does it look like to not just go to church and then just leave our crosses at church? What does it look like to not just like open your Bible, read and pray, close it, and then just go about your life like you did your penance and your duty, and then you can go about your life? But what if we saw ourselves? And that, by the way, is why people wear crosses, unless it's just cute jewelry to some, and I'm sure that's the case for many. But for those of us who wear crosses, let's make sure that it's because we want to remember that we have to carry our crosses everywhere we go. We don't go to a church event and then just leave Jesus in the corner. We carry our crosses wherever we go. We follow him whether it's easy or whether it's hard, because we know that our life is going to be much more fulfilling and meaningful if we're walking with Jesus and we're really, truly following him, okay? Now, Jesus goes on to explain what this should look like when it comes to following him, because it's easy to say, do those things. But he wants to flesh this out a little bit. And I'm going to need the kids to come up here and help me with this. So we're going to do our kids message in the middle of the message. So if you're a kid and you want to give me a hand with this lesson, I got a real quick example I need your help with, okay? All right. Come on in here. Come up here, kids. I have a dart gun that I'm going to use for this example. So have a seat down there. No, down here. We'll stay down here. I don't want to cut any cords. All right. I got a dart gun. This is a non-lethal dart gun. I already have a volunteer. You want to help me and hold this? Let's just say we each have $10. You have $10 and I have $10. Let's just say we're going to have a dart gun contest, and whoever hits the other person the most gets the other person's money. Are you willing to do that right now? I don't have a dart gun, so I think you'd probably beat me, right? Oh yeah, hold on. Now listen to what Jesus says. Okay, hold on. You and I are going to have a dart gun battle. Okay, this is going to be fun. Listen to what Jesus says. Listen to this, kids. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Think about Legos. You have lots of Legos, okay? Suppose you want to build a huge Lego tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the bottom of the tower and you're not able to finish it, everyone who sees is going to laugh at you and say, this person built what they couldn't finish. So if you're supposed to build a Lego tower big enough for you to live in, and you don't have enough Legos, what are you going to have? You're going to have a half-built Lego tower. You're going to be sitting in your Lego tower, and your head's going to be poking up the top, and all your friends are going to go, ha, 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 you can't build anything. Don't you know that you need way more Legos than that? You should have counted your Legos first, right? So Jesus says, I want you to be ready for whatever you're going to do, and if that's building a tower, then you got to make sure you have enough stuff. And then he talks about Nerf gun battles. He talks about war. Well, we're going to use Nerf guns as an example here. So I'd rather not have us fight a real war up front. That'd be interesting. So he says, so suppose a king was about to go to war against another king. So you're one king, I'll be the other king. Okay, we're going to go to a Nerf gun war. Okay? Won't he first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men or a small dart gun to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000. Britt, hook me up, brother. Let's just say this is my dart gun. This is a fully automatic dart gun, motorized. I think it's got a V8 engine in there. I'm not sure. I count about 75 darts. There's not any darts in that gun. I think we shot them all out. Now let me ask you again. If you got $5 and I got $5 and the contest is who can hit the other person, is that a good bet for you? No? Why not?
Because he doesn't have any darts.
He doesn't have any darts, and I've got 75 fully automatic darts. So here's what Jesus is saying. Before you try to do anything in life, figure out how to do it. How many of you want to be a good student this year at school? Do you know that's going to take some time?
Yeah.
Well, you know you're going to have some homework, right? Yeah. You know your moms and dads, your grandpas are going to probably have to help you. You're going to have to be ready to ask your teacher for help. If you want to do anything, you're going to need to be ready. And if you ever see something where you don't think you can do it, if you ever see something where you're going to need help, you have to raise your hand and ask an adult that you trust. And when it comes to following Jesus, guess what, kids? It's not always easy to do the right thing and follow Jesus. And so I want you, along with the rest of us, to remember that ask God for help and ask other people for help, and remember to think ahead and say, here's what I think I'm going to need to follow Jesus. Will you give my fellow king warrior a hand? And you guys can go sit down now. I couldn't literally fight that battle. I would feel like a bad pastor pelting the young man with my Nerf gun, but I think you got the point. I think we all know what would have happened. I would have probably missed all of them. I'm not a good Nerf gun aimer. So Jesus says, wouldn't it be better if you're going to go to battle, and if you're a king and you got 10,000 men and there's an army coming with 20,000, you're going to probably want to think this through. He said, if he's not able, won't he send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and ask for terms of peace? Here's the point of all this. This sounds like Jesus is kind of a little ADHD, where he's just kind of like, what are you talking about? Now he ties it back together with what he said earlier about following him. He says, in the same way, those of you who do not give up everything, you have, cannot be my disciples. Unless you take everything that you have, every part of who you are, and put it before me and say, God, I want you to lead me in every area of my life. I want you to forgive me in every area, and I want you to lead me in every area. If you're not going to do that, that's bad planning. Because a relationship with God involves every area of my life. It's like planning to build a half tower or going to battle without the soldiers you need. Now, at Surprise, we have something called community groups. And I want to get to that in a minute. And I'm going to invite Brent up here in just 1 second. We're going to talk about this. But listen to how he concludes this chapter 14. He says, salt is good. But if it loses its saltiness, and back then they would literally go to the edge of the Dead Sea, and they would pick up salt deposits that had kind of fallen away from the water and the water dried up and you're left with this salty deposit, and they would use that for their salt. But if salt had gotten mixed with soil deposits and other minerals, they thought the salt just lost its saltiness, when in actuality it had kind of gotten combined with other minerals so it wasn't salty anymore. So what do you do with that? You can't use it as fertilizer, you can't use it for food, you got to throw it away. He says, salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is fit neither for the soil nor for the manure pile. It's thrown out. So here's the thing Jesus is saying. I want you to be salty. I want you to be so ready for life that you're like salt that's not like kind of like, oh, it's lost its salt. You put salt on a corn on the cob. If it's actually just like ice crystals or just something that doesn't have any salty flavor, you miss that taste of salt. And Jesus, I want you to be ready to be salty in your life. Jesus ends this whole story saying, I want you to be ready to follow me. And then he uses simple table salt as an example of what that could look like. I don't want people tasting the goodness of God unless it has salt in it. God wants his people to be salty. Now, here's the thing. We believe the fall is an unknown. Because of COVID, we don't exactly know what our plans are as a church. We know we're planning to go back to worship on Sundays. We know we're planning to do things that are exciting and good. But we also know that we will respond and be faithful to what we feel God says is the safest and the most courageous way to lead people into a relationship with Jesus, however we can. But one thing that we are commanded to do as a church is to be surprising. It's to be salty. It's to make sure that people taste the goodness of God as they relate to us. And that doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen just because I go to a church service. It happens when we band together with other believers to keep each other salty. So on September 20th, we're starting our new semester of community groups. How many of you have been in a Surprise community group before? So look at all the hands around. It really is. You're not alone. If you haven't tried it before, you're going to have lots of people that have done it before that are going to be able to do it with you. We'll have new groups forming. Ann Hagrod is kind of our community groups director along with our executive director at Surprise. Ann, can you raise your hand? There she is. Talk to Ann after church. Right now, we are looking for leaders of groups. We anticipate a need for many more groups this fall because if for some reason out of COVID we have to stop worshiping corporately again, we found this spring that community groups were how people stayed ready and salty. Community groups were how people, and when they couldn't meet in person, they just met via Zoom and had online conversations to pray for one another and talk about the message questions, cheer one another on, and encourage one another. That allowed us to stay church. Because honestly, if all we do is just live stream worship or rely on just attendance, people don't feel very salty. The most satisfied people at Surprise are the people that are engaged in one of our community groups. There's something about it that just gives a lot of life. They feel ready for the next chapter. In coming weeks, we're going to hear from other people who have been a part of community groups, including some of those who have really been just thrown off guard by some real significant challenges in life. And one of the things they tell us over and over is, if it weren't for my community group, I don't think we'd be able to do this. So if you are interested in helping to lead a community group, please talk to Ann or myself after worship. If you're interested in joining a community group, click on the groups tab on our church app or reach out to us if you're not super tech savvy. And I want to conclude by just underscoring whether you're a man, because men sometimes we like to pretend we don't need anyone or anything, that we like to rest on our accomplishment. But the reality is, who are you? And COVID has certainly been good in that it's taught us this. Who am I when everything I can do, manage, or accomplish is gone? Who am I? And I've known men who lose their job, lose their marriage, lose their home, and they want their lives to end because they have never formed an identity apart from their accomplishment. The most important thing we do in our community groups is identity formation. We help people ground their identity in something that can never get taken away, that can never get sick, that can never fade away. In a world where stuff can change on a dime and everything changes. And then we support one another to make sure that we have each other's backs, no matter what comes. I've been talking to our youth pastor, Joseph, and we're dreaming about what it looks like to create family groups, what it looks like to have parents talking to parents about how's it going with your kids, teens talking to teens about how are you dealing with these challenges at school? How can I pray for you? You see, after Jesus talks about the cost of following him and the importance it is to think ahead of what am I going to really need to follow Jesus well, Luke chapter 15 starts, the passage of scripture that led us to start Surprise Church Bismarck. And in Luke chapter 15, Jesus is hanging out with drunk people, tax collectors, who were seen as traitors and sinners. And the religious people, the grumpy punk religious people, were mocking and criticizing Jesus for hanging out with the wrong sort of people. That if you're really a holy man, you'd stay away from people like that. They didn't understand Jesus at all. And so Jesus tells a couple stories. One story he tells about a lost sheep. And the owner of the flock of sheep, which is God, the owner of the flock of sheep leaves all 99 sheep behind to go and get the one that was lost. And when he finds him, he throws a party. And he tells a story about a son who got lost, who wandered away from his home and wished his dad for dead and wasted his dad's resources and came home with low expectations, thinking his dad would either pummel him or maybe hire him as a hired hand, and said his dad threw him a surprise party. That's where the name of this church came from. And so we've said from the very first day of Surprise, what would it look like to be a community of people that band together to creatively bless Bismarck, that don't just go to church, but becomes the church, that don't just get together on Sundays or Wednesdays, but does church in living rooms and kitchens and neighborhoods. And that's what our community groups are going to do. They're not just going to pretend church or play church, they're going to be church. And if you've never experienced that, that is my number one prayer for you, that you would take the next step past and say, you know what? I'm going to let people in. I'm going to allow them to let me into their lives. I'm going to remind them who they are in Jesus. I'm going to remind them that they matter. I'm going to let them remind me that there's more to life than the ups and downs and challenges I'm facing, that I have a Father in heaven who has loved me from the very beginning, and that it's never over because Jesus is always with us. Jesus finishes his stories about how challenging it is to follow him with a story about a God who gave everything to win us into his family. And he said, I want you to be ready to share that with the world. I want you to be salty enough for the world to taste the goodness of God through you. And I promise you this, if you try to be a one-man church, you won't. I honestly don't believe you can follow God very long until you just peter out. Life will give you an uppercut sooner or later, and it's over. I know a lot of former Christians who just got tired of it because they did it alone. Not one of us, man or woman, young or old, is strong enough to face this world without the salt and light that comes when other believers band together.